Hi, this is Jordan Ramirez, and normally I host my podcast show, Film Talk with Jordan Ramirez. Now I am hosting a special show for my podcast, Film Talk with Jordan Ramirez Minisode Jordan Ramirez Recommends. The minisodes are now airing every Monday at 12 p.m. as part of the Film Talk with Jordan Ramirez podcast. So, without further ado, you are listening to a Film Talk with Jordan Ramirez Minisode. My recommended film is the pre-code romantic melodrama Merrily We Go to Hell, released in 1932, directed by Dorothy Arzner, starring Sylvia Sidney and Frederick March. Jerry Corbett, played by Frederick March, is a working-class newspaper journalist who has a problem with his alcoholism. One night, as he is at a hedonistic party, he meets a young woman named Joan Prentice, played by Sylvia Sidney. Joan is the daughter of a wealthy industrialist. As they got to know each other throughout the entire story, Jerry, realizing that his drinking is making Joan feel embarrassed, decides to give up drinking and focus on the marriage between him and his new bride. Once the two of them are married, Jerry and Joan are living their new lives as husband and wife, even though Jerry is now unemployed and still needs to get some employment with his plays that need to be produced. Jerry tries to get an acceptance letter from every producer across town for his plays, but to no avail, until he gets an offer from a theater producer in New York City. Once Jerry takes the job, he is reunited with the woman whom he broke up with to stay sober, and the woman who caused him misery and grief, Claire Hempstead, played by Adrienne Allen, whom was mentioned earlier as to why he was previously in love with a woman that ended up in a broken love affair and why he never wanted to be with a woman again. Once Claire comes back into the picture, he starts to go back to his drinking habits, and the marriage is starting to worsen between Joan and Jerry. Accompanying Jerry and Joan in the story are his friends, Vi, played by Esther Howard, and Buck, played by Skeet Gallagher. Not only do they present as the comic relief in the story, but they also help to sort out the problems with their marriage. This is Joan and Jerry's marriage in the film. This film is a product of the pre-code Hollywood era before the Hays production code would be enforced a few years later. So in this film you will see themes of alcoholism, extramarital relationships, hedonism, a few instances of profanity, and of course women's liberation full on the screen. What I like about this film are the direction, cinematography, acting, and the story itself. Dorothy Arzner was the only female director during the pre-code and the golden age of Hollywood period who was working during this time in the film industry. Some of her other credits include Fashions for Women from 1927, The Wild Party from 1928, Honor Among Lovers from 1931, Christopher Strong from 1933, Nana from 1934, Craig's Wife from 1936, The Bride Wore Red from 1937, her feminist masterpiece Dance Girl Dance from 1940, and First Comes Courage from 1943. What is not mentioned or given credit when it comes to her direction is her technical achievements that she managed to make work during the transition to sound. She was the early innovator of the boom mic when there was difficulty trying to get the microphone out of the camera when it was shown on film, or to get the actors' voices heard on the screen, but without the microphone being visible. In this film, her camera work is so fluid along with the collaboration of her cinematographer, David Abel. One example of this technical fluid camera-like movement is the opening sequence, when the camera moves from the rooftops of the Chicago apartments to the liquor bottles in front of Jerry as he is sitting down outside of the party in that smooth tracking shot. One of the best examples of unique and critically technical achievements of camera angles ever put out during this period. When it comes to the standout performances in the film, Sylvia Sidney dominates the screen, going from a young innocent woman who is trustful that Jerry will do the right thing to becoming a disillusioned woman who is hit with the reality, and it shows in her emotions, with the camera focusing on her wide range of emotions on her face in some of the close-up shots on the screen. Another standout performance in the film is Frederick March as Jerry, who is not only a husband dealing with his alcoholism in the film, but also because of his actions with not taking the marriage seriously that have done immense harm and damage to both him and Joan. The story, I will admit, is a little bit lackluster, but it is a product of its time with these themes that I mentioned of hedonism, extramarital relationships, and of course the instance of what one would have to do if they were liberated, especially from a woman's point of view. The film is an adaptation of the novel I, Jerry, Take Thee, Joan by Cleo Lucas, published in 1931. While the book was a success, it was not enough to be used for the title of the film, so the title for the film was changed to Merrily We Go to Hell. The film was released on June 10, 1932. The reviews for the film were mostly focused on Arzner's direction and not her technical achievements that are noticeable in this film. And this film turned out to be the last film that Dorothy Arzner made for Paramount Studios and would later become a director for RKO Radio Pictures. The film did not receive its proper academic scholarly treatment or did not gain enough attention until it was released by the Criterion Collection in 2021, and suddenly the film was re-evaluated or reintroduced to those who have never seen this film. I highly recommend this film if you have never seen it, as a hidden gem from the pre-code era at Paramount Studios. It is an amazing film directed by the only female director who worked during the silent era up until the transition of sound and finally up until the golden age of Hollywood. Arzner's contributions to film from a technological and story perspective cannot be ignored, as well as how her talent should be re-evaluated for those who have never seen her work. The amazing performances by Sylvia Sidney and Frederick March are also something that cannot be ignored, and the cinematography of David Abel are great to watch as well. While the story may somewhat be melodramatic in some moments in the film that could drag out the performances, I still adore this film overall as one of my favorite pre-code films of this period. On the next Film Talk with Jordan Ramirez, I dive deep into the world of Powell and Pressburger with their adaptation of Hans Christian Andersen's The Red Shoes, starring Maura Shearer from 1948, in this amazingly wonderful Technicolor horror film that was considered to be one of the grand masterpieces of this period, and a film that Martin Scorsese said is one of his absolute favorites in his praise of Michael Powell. Join me for that episode starting this Friday at 4 p.m. only on Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Radio Public. This has been a Film Talk with Jordan Ramirez Minisode. Tune into the Minisodes every Monday at 12 p.m. and Film Talk with Jordan Ramirez every Friday at 4 p.m. on Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Radio Public. If you are on Spotify, make sure to like and subscribe to keep the show going, and to make sure to recommend to your friends and family members to tune into this podcast, as we want to reach our goal of attracting at least 100 listeners to almost every episode that I publish so that we can keep going. And until then, I'll see you at the movies.